again. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town Board Work Session for the Town of Ossining and also special meeting for June 20th, 2017. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Great. Starting with our work session, correct? Okay. So we're starting with our work session, and we'll do announcements in a little bit later. Have first up on our work session for this evening, we're going to be talking about water and sewer infrastructure, getting an update from Andy Teese, our water superintendent. So welcome, Andy. Come on up. I don't even know what this one is. That's a new one on me. So yeah.
Guess I'll do it here.
Oh. It's not usually there.
They use.
Okay, it's not usually there.
Testing.
So-
Oh, this is good.
All right.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
A couple things I wanted to talk about. First, I want to talk about the work that's being done before the state replaces the culvert down on the Croton Dam Road on the 134 project. So what I'm going to talk about, the following work, I'm going to talk about what was required for us to do before the state can come in and actually immobilize and replace the stormwater culvert. The last few weeks, the water department, along with our annual bid excavator, has been on site replacing the necessary critical infrastructure, which consists of isolation valves and connecting piping. We also replaced valves on the east side of 9A by the Woods condo. Tomorrow we have a scheduled shutdown at the corner of Feeney and Croton Dam Road to replace an additional 12-inch valve. If everybody remembers the water break from 3 years ago, where we instituted a boil notice for 7,000 residents, this was because if we had this infrastructure back then, we would have been able to isolate those valves and not affected such a large area without giving notice to the residents. So this gives us redundancy. It allows us to feed waters different ways because some of the areas did not have valves installed. And what's critical about this is most of the town is on the west side, and a lot of the village residents are on the west side and of 9A, but yet the Lakeville tank that feeds that area is on the other side of 9A. That bridge crossing, which is going to be removed by the state, it's going to be required to put a new water line and a new sewer line. So in order to do that and isolate and for everybody to have pressure and full volume, we had to do all this piping and valving ahead of time. So the state said they'd be on site to mobilize within the next month for that project. Their scope of work is to set up bypass pumping so that the existing sanitary sewer can be replaced by them with a new sanitary sewer. The water department will mechanically install the new water main where their old culvert is going to be removed. Then the state will install the sanitary sewer in that trench, along with the new culvert on top. They'll be responsible for repaving anything that they disturb. That gives a little update on that project.
And just to refresh everybody's memory, we were talking about this a year ago, maybe, and it was a different project. And again, just for the audience, maybe who isn't following along exactly, this is approximately at 9A in Croton Dam Road /134 on the west side of the road is where the culvert replacement is taking place by the state.
Correct. Okay, a couple of projects we're going to talk about are the Gordon Avenue water main replacement, the 12-inch transmission water main along 9A, which will be next year, some grants that we're applying for, and then the spray pad down at Ingle Park. The Gordon Avenue project, Charles Manganaro completed their engineering design for the Gordon Avenue project about a week and a half ago, submitted that to Westchester County. So I called Westchester County today just to ask if we could be put up on top of the list. I want to get that project started this summer. It's going to consist of replacing the water main on Gordon Avenue, and then so the old water main will be removed out of the ground, the new water main will be installed, and then before that has to happen, temporary water main needs to be installed over land, and then everybody's services need to be connected. So logistically, the water main, temporary water mains installed, everybody's services get connected. But before that, it has to be tested. The health department has to approve it. It's a whole process. So I've asked our consulting engineer, they are the inspectors, along with myself and Mr. Farley on site, to give us a timeline. And it looks like we could have substantial completion by middle of November, as long as we get the health department documents back timely. What that's going to consist of is, once we get the health department documents back, we'll have to advertise the bid, we'll have to have the bid opening, check insurances, award the project, and then go from there. So,
And this is being paid for by
this is out of the water fund.
the water fund.
And we're going to wait for final pavement restoration until the spring, so let the trench settle. It could be restored, go through a full winter, and then be repaved in the spring. It would make no sense to do it now. So logistically, I don't want bypass piping, going into December out there where it could freeze. So if we have to, they could, we'll see how we start the project. If it's much later than July, then we might break it into 2 phases, I'll say. But right now, we're not there yet. I need the health department approval first.
Okay.
Also, we've designed.
Can you just talk about where along it's going from where to where on Gordon?
It's 1,800 linear feet, so it's going from the intersection of where we had that flooding issue. I don't remember the crossroad.
So from what city?
I don't remember.
No,
the
it's from
cross-
Ryder.
Ryder, all the way towards Pleasantville Road, but it's 3/4 of the main, and then on the other side, it's going to go down around. I'm trying to remember the name of the road. It's something Parkway, River Parkway. So it'll include River Parkway too.
Okay.
So it's it was only like 10 residents affecting to do the additional 25% towards Pleasantville Road, but that number alone would have added like another $700,000. And we looked at the amount of water breaks in a 10-year period. There are only 2 water main breaks in that area, so we looked for the biggest bang for the buck for that. That project alone, the engineer's estimate was, just so everybody has an idea, $1.3 million. And
That's without the extra piece.
that's
you're saying?
without the extra piece.
Correct.
And that's 1,825 linear feet on Gordon Avenue and 410 feet on Riverview Parkway. On the other project that we're designing is the transmission main along 9A, and it's going to go from Stormy Town down to Croton Dam Road. That's where we had that huge break twice. That's $1 million engineer's estimate, and that's a 12-inch main as well. So all this water work that we're doing now at the intersection is going to make that much easier for the install. That job's we're going to be looking to bid over the winter and then start in the spring. Which brings us to the next step with all the granting. That's the grants that are being offered by the state. We're working on applying for these 2 projects towards that grant that's due the 23rd of this month. In fact, the village board is going to be instituting a resolution tomorrow night to talk about the funding of that grants of that project so that we're eligible in every facet for that grant. My biggest concern for that grant was that if we start most projects that you go for granting, if you actually have it shovel ready and you start the project, that disqualifies you when they actually give you the answer. This is different. They'll retroactively allow you to start the project and to get funding if you get it. So I didn't want this to cause like the situation that happened up at our dam where we waited 3 years for an answer and we didn't get the grant. So we're going to continue no matter what. So that we're working on the grants.
And these are the water infrastructure grants.
Water
from New York State.
infrastructure grants. offered by the state.
Okay.
And we're really, our grant's going to try and focus on the intermunicipal grant side of what's being offered because it's a town and village. So I think that'll give us a better opportunity if they're going to look at us between, the town and village as a joint venture.
As one whole water system.
Correct. Finally, the architectural proposal just received, and you received this afternoon, from Lothrop Engineering / Architects. They designed the original spray deck down at Ingle Park. The health department will require them to have the final sign off once the spray deck is built by our annual bidder. So I'm procuring proposals in the last couple of days for the electrical side. And once I get the electrical proposals, I'll send them to you guys.
Okay.
But it's moving along. And once we have those two final numbers, we have the number for the proposal for the architects. And once we get the electrical and it's within the budget, then you could move forward if you choose to institute the purchase order for the annual bidder for the $350,000.
Great.
Any questions?
Questions?
I think we just, to clarify, the Gordon Avenue project and the Stormy Town Road projects are both projects that are being funded from the water fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Fund balance, and then it most likely will be a borrow later. And then we'll see where we stand with grants. I mean, it would be great if we got a decent amount on the grants. I don't want to jinx us, but hopefully we get something. Either way, we were going to do it. We had to do it no matter what. But now is the time. Originally, I was going to focus more on the new filtration plant, but that was not ready to go because of site plans and what has to go through zoning and planning and everything else. So this was ready, and see what happens.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that update.
Thanks.
Questions? All right. Fantastic. And we do not have our planner here. So we're going to keep skipping ahead. Let's talk about our shared services mandate. Ms. Zaha.
We're going to skip right over.
We are? We don't have everybody here who's going to be talking about it. So, all right, because we thought we'd have our planner here and
Okay.
go to that.
Good evening.
Hi.
On Thursday, this past Thursday, I attended the shared services meeting at the Westchester County Center for Supervisor Levenberg, and I was actually joined by interim village manager Paul Fraioli and town controller village treasurer Tom Warren, and many, many, many other municipalities and school districts in Westchester County. And the reason that everyone was gathered is because the county has been given a directive by New York State to put together some sort of a shared service arrangement to be submitted to Albany by, I believe, August 15th. So the timeline is rather short. And everyone was assembled to discuss what ideas they might be able to throw at the county to see if the county could help them with anything. And basically the conversation ended with an assignment from one of the mayors in the room who said, why doesn't everyone just come up with a list of everything that they're doing? We can exchange those things, and perhaps there are more ideas that some of us could be using than some of you are already doing. So if you take a look, you have a list of currently all the shared service arrangements that the town of Ossining participates in, including intermunicipal agreements, many of which are with the village of Ossining, some of which are with Westchester County, a few of which are with other neighboring municipalities, and then some other sort of shared services arrangements, if you could call it that, that we use, including a bunch of consortiums that we're part of, NYSHIP, which is the New York State medical plan, NYMER, which is a sort of consortium of a bunch of municipalities to get lower rates on liability insurance. And so we basically just wanted to share this list with you and see if there are any other ideas that you would like us to add to this list to maybe submit to Westchester County. So any ideas that you might have of things you've heard of other municipalities doing that you think we ought to be doing, or anything that you believe Westchester County could be doing for us.
Well, I would just suggest that it might be a possibility to discuss grant writing services as a way for sharing, potentially either between municipalities or between school district and municipalities. Could be something that we look at. We heard recently, I think Scarsdale's started a food scraps program, composting program, and that could be something that we might want to look into. Additional ways that we could do that. I think talked about purchasing already, that we have a lot of shared purchasing. And many of us also have joint advocacy organizations that, not really on here, but that is another component, part of our government is advocacy, so we already do that, probably through our various and sundry associations, Association of Towns, Westchester Municipal Officials, that also already do.
I think something that was so encouraging is that many of the ideas that other people were sort of bringing up are things that we already do. I think Ossining is really sort of at the forefront of these shared services agreements, and we've been doing them for so very, long that we have so many, there's not a whole lot of low-hanging fruit, left for us. So it made me feel sort of proud, but also a little frustrated because now we're sort of in a position to scramble and
Certainly, there continue to be other services that I think that, have been talked about for many years among and within our own municipalities that we could look to improve or share. Talked about, potentially there are some additional back office services we could consider sharing with the school district. Certainly with the village, there are some services that we could continue to evaluate, and oftentimes when people retire or leave, it's an opportunity for us to, take a look at how we're delivering our services to see if there's a way that we could deliver them more efficiently. So I think, we always have to be on the lookout for those opportunities and take them when we can.
I know this is sad because I work for the state, but I never really understood this one. This isn't about municipalities themselves. This is about the county, right? So somehow the county is supposed to come up with some shared service from all the municipalities together, or I never quite understood. And part of the reason is maybe because Westchester is so different than some of the other counties like upstate. But this is supposed to be a shared service that the county can provide amongst us all as, and
Yeah,
so
I
the
think-
question is, what is it that they can do for us, or that we can do for each other? I'm just, this always confounded me.
I mean, I know that, I believe that at one point Long Island looked into offering transportation services for their school districts, for example. So the counties were looking at ways, I think it was Nassau? I don't know. Councilwoman Dottori was there, yes? So,
I've gone to school on Long Island sometime.
no, I know, but I know that you happen to know who the county executive was at the time, Mr. Swazi, I believe it was, and he was looking
That does
into.
sound like something he would
Yes,
suggest.
it was
yes.
something that he was looking into, which was that I think that they were going to try to offer school bus services. And one of the things that schools have to do is they have to provide transportation out of district for many students, and oftentimes the way that the school buses travel, they crisscross and they go from here to there and everywhere. And if the counties could potentially offer school transportation countywide, there might be a way to offer those types of services more efficiently. I know that other counties have done it, and
But I don't know if that's a realistic thing to think that this county is going to take up a heavy lift of providing
I'm just offering ideas.
school bus services for all of their municipalities that offer it. I mean, I guess that's a suggestion. I think what you're asking is what are the thought process of things that we could add to this list? And while we have all of these many, many things, I'm not I mean, we could ask for a wish list from the county, but I'm just unsure where that's going to really go. I think
That is
we-
pretty much what everyone else did who submitted something, was
Okay.
a lot of sort of pie in the sky
Yeah.
requests.
Okay, so happy to ask for school busing services, but I mean, I like the idea of the grant writing thing. I think that could be something I could see where maybe they might be so happy to think of that rather than school busing. So, but I mean, I don't know what else. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. I don't know. You think, Karen? Is there anything you think the county can?
I think, in years past, the county did provide more help in areas like planning. I'm not sure what the capacity is today to do. But certainly, when you talk about trends in planning and development, a regional approach, that's where I mean, again, like services like busing and things, transportation, I see where the logic of that makes sense. But I also think, comprehensive planning is probably, an opportunity too, although it's not clear to me that the county still has the capacity to do that.
Certainly, we have these watersheds and overlapping zoning and suggestions for overlays, and maybe that's a place where, the county could look at it's helping with planning around watersheds. I know that we have to all come together, multiple, municipalities looking at how to protect watersheds, so that maybe is a starting point, if nothing else. I know that the county has been involved in that over the years, and making suggestions, but maybe they could be more involved.
Maybe they can look at traffic. Get congested because of some of the backup and building going on to the north, and congested all the way through where our 134 intersection is impacted by north. Maybe they can look at that at a countywide level and how to get more flow.
Our state
They can look at that
are
too.
also responsible for a lot of those roads. Other suggestions, thoughts? Thank you so much for attending on behalf of the town. Very appreciative. We had some other local business that we were attending to that day, so I wasn't able to go. But okay, well, we have our planner here, Mr. Stolman. So I think we're going to bounce back to our discussion of our zoning law. We've spent a lot of time talking about this over the last year, and we've made changes in response to the public feedback that we've received, and we have some more items for discussion this evening that were prompted by comments from our public hearing. I did a little bit of investigation from some of the comments that we had received. Just to let you know, I reached out to the Director of Planning, the mayor in Beacon, to talk a little bit about how their artist live workspace was working up there. And they are very pleased with it. They think that it's really, I quote, "I really think it's a win-win. It's worked. It's a cost-effective way to move forward in a society where it's harder to afford to live every day. Many of the artists who've taken advantage of it are able to, from living and working in the same place, are able to write off part of their housing expense because it's also a workspace for them. What they talked about is now, I think after 8 or 10 years that it's been in place, they might want to extend it past just being just artists, but that doesn't preclude anybody from starting with artists. They said, they at some point they wanted to open it up to chefs, musicians, and they talked about architects, and some of what they talked about was that, at some point it might be hard to describe exactly what an artist is. But the director of planning, or Anthony Ruggiero, also worked in Peekskill for some time, who I spoke to, and he said that Peekskill was a lot more restrictive, and it was worse being more restrictive than being less restrictive like Beacon. And I believe that this was written more to the, to look like beacons than it
Yep.
was to look like
Yes.
peak scales, because
Yes.
it's less restrictive, not more restrictive. So in terms of how it's been working for them, they've been very pleased. They said,
Who's the they? No, is it they, Mayor?
I spoke to the mayor.
Okay.
And I
just
spoke
said
to,
they, so I
yeah,
didn't-
no, well, I spoke to the mayor and the director of planning, so
Okay.
they
I
are
thought you-
those two people that I spoke to.
Got it.
And they, I'm just quoted, I quoted them
This
just
is not a
now.
public hearing.
I quoted them just now, so I just want to, and I told them that I was going to quote them. So I just want to make it very clear that that's what they said to me tonight. And what they said is that they're looking to expand it and change it maybe to get rid of the artist definition, so it would be live, work, or work, live space, so that they could open it up to other people who live and work in the same space. So just to let you here on the board know, that was the feedback that I received directly from the mayor. So to let you know that.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Stolman, do you want to talk to us a little bit about density? Because we're going to,
Sure.
we asked last time, I think, for you to look at what would the maximum density be, and based on that, and that was actually an excellent, I think, assignment. I think, hopefully it'll give us some more definition of what maximum capacity would look like.
Sure, thank you. So in front of you, there are two figures, and there were two scenarios that we're asked to look at, and there's a figure for each one. The first one is artist live workspaces based upon the provisions that we currently have in the proposed local law. And without getting caught up in the design itself, this yields 3 buildings. Each building has 13 live workspaces. They're each 2-story buildings for a total of 39 live workspaces across the entire property. The property is 2 acres in size, and there are 3 parcels here because there's a provision in the NC zoning district which says that you can only have 12,000 square feet of floor area per lot. So we created 3 lots in order to maximize the amount of floor area that we could put on the property. And you see
Does that
that,
include the area lot?
no. I'm sorry,
I'm just
let
asking.
me start from the beginning. This is just the relatively large lot that has frontage on Old Albany Post Road and Stanley Avenue that we're contemplating rezoning from GB1 to Neighborhood Commercial NC. So it's just one lot, just that one lot. So, again, this exercise yielded 39 live workspaces on the 2 acres. And then figure 2 is a mixed-use project, again, 3 buildings on 3 lots for the same reason I mentioned before. This has office down below and apartments above, and each building has 6,000 square feet of office, and above 7 2-bedroom dwelling units in each building. So for a total of 18,000 square feet of office and 21 2-bedroom apartments. And the reason why we used office instead of retail is because we were trying to maximize the build-out. So we chose a use that has a lower parking requirement by about 35% in order to maximize the size of the buildings. We could have done it with retail. The buildings would have been somewhat smaller because more room would have been taken up with parking than in this plan. So the conclusion that I'm reaching is that this is too much density for Crotonville, and we should, can I say it?
Mm-hmm.
Dial the density down.
Dialed down.
Oh, I said it wrong?
You're good. Yes, I
I
think.
tried.
Yeah, so I think that this was, I want to thank our residents for coming to us and asking us to look at what it would look like if we were to maximize this. Again, would it happen this way? It's hard to say, but it seems like I don't know, from my perspective, it seems too much for for the area. So, having had some brief conversations with David before, getting here this evening, it seems like, it makes sense for us to dial it down. So what would your recommendations be?
Well, with respect to the live work, I would make it commensurate with the multifamily that's permitted or proposed to be permitted in the NC, which is 1 dwelling unit per 5,000 square feet, which is about 8 dwelling units per acre. So that would mean a total of 16 dwelling units on this property.
Okay.
And I haven't.
Versus 39.
Versus 39, exactly.
Or 21.
Well,
Right, so
The
16
21
is versus 39, and then if we go to the 21,
right. I've got to dial that down, if I said that right.
Yeah.
But I haven't done the calculation yet. But it would
Okay.
be commensurate with 5,000 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. We'd have to lower the amount of non-residential, lower the number of apartments, and I've got to work that out.
okay,
But it would be, commensurate with the multifamily, the live-work, and then the mixed use.
Okay.
have any other comments besides the dial down the density alliteration?
Not a public meeting.
This isn't a public hearing, this is a work session for the town board. You're welcome to submit your comments.
So one of the things that we talked about and that David mentioned, to respond to the sounds that I'm hearing from the audience, even though this isn't a public hearing, was that this was maximizing the living space because we were looking at density. What it doesn't deal with is looking at what the maximum number of vehicles would be if you weren't maximizing the density. So if you actually had retail versus office space, you would have more cars but fewer people potentially coming and going, or more parking spaces. So I think that we should just also look at that and be cognizant of the fact that this is a tough area for traffic. And if we need to dial that back as well, that's something that we should consider in this dialing down.
Do you mean fewer parking spaces than are required by zoning currently?
Potentially,
We touched on that last time.
yes.
Okay,
I think potentially, yes.
right. These three layouts use the parking requirements that are currently in the zoning law and ones that are being proposed in the local law. So this meets all the parking requirements. We could lessen the parking requirements a bit, and then that would, people would self-select
Exactly.
and live there if they.
If they didn't need as much parking.
Exactly.
Correct. Yes, I think that that's
So we can
a
do
good.
that.
But as you shrink down the density, it should also shrink down the number of,
Oh, yeah. yeah.
Parking.
Yes.
so
But I
that
think-
number will go down also.
Right,
That number would go down.
but we were looking at.
Yeah, but if we could, I mean, we talked about the whole concept of not requiring so much parking per, and, that would, I think it's something to look at.
I do too. I mean,
It's
Yeah.
something to look at, but once you're there, people, they tend to get another car. And that's where your problems come in all the time. And I can vouch for that, because I've had to sign, yes, you can build that, but we need the parking space. Now, the people live there, got 2-3 cars.
well, the good
Right,
news is
well,
I
that
think
comes with the
Bruce's
residency,
business down
right?
below is gonna increase. I think he's gonna have a lot more parking spaces offered down below.
Well,
One-
but
one way
that
to deal
also
with that-
depends upon what happens, right? Because
He's
if it's,
talking about parking.
if it's residents,
Yeah.
residents bring
Right.
cars.
One way to deal with that
But-
is to require the land banking of a certain amount of parking spaces. So maybe the entire requirement is shown, but 90% of that is built, and then there's 10% available to make up the difference between what's being built and what's required by code in case there's a parking problem.
Say that
I
one more
don't know
time.
if they,
Okay.
Say that one more time.
yeah.
Well, the site plan
Mhm.
would show 100% of the parking that's required by code, the way the code is now,
Okay.
and the way it's proposed to be. But the planning board would require that 10% of the parking be land banked, that is, that it be.
Not be done.
Not be built.
Set
At
aside,
the inception.
right.
But if the building inspector were to go out and find there's a parking problem, or if the project itself were to come in and say, look, we have this big parking problem, it's a fairly unforgiving situation because there's no parking on the street, they could build the other 10%.
Okay?
I do.
So it's a safety net, or a safety valve.
Okay. 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 All right.
I like the sound of that, Northern.
All right.
So you'll show us new drawings of,
Well, I don't know
you'll
if we're going to
just
see
let us
new
know.
drawings, but we'll have a
see
discuss,
it.
we'll have
of a discussion about the new
Right, so
numbers?
I think that the drawings were just to kind of figure out how would you maximize this and what would it look like potentially.
Right.
If this is just potential, this is actual, anything. And, just to get back to the point of the public thinking that we have something built or proposed, there's nothing proposed, this may never be built. This is just so that we know what would the maximum potential be if somebody came in tomorrow, wanted to buy this, and somebody was willing to sell it, and we had the new zoning in place. And it looks like it is too much, so we're going to go back and dial it down. And we, again, may not see additional drawings to that, but we'll know what these maximums would be instead of a total of 39 units if it were all artist live workspace, for example, or 21 bedroom units and 18,000 square foot of office space if it were mixed-use residential office. It would be, just already, this is zoned residential. So the only area that we're talking about, the new zoning area.
Those are lots across the street. Those are 5,000 square foot lots across the street with homes. Across Stanley Avenue.
Right.
Right.
All right.
So when is your next work session?
We know?
Well, it would be on Wednesday, July 5th,
Wednesday?
because Tuesday, July 4th
Right.
is Independence Day.
Right. And that's something that we haven't worked out yet, so potentially Wednesday, July 5th.
Current, let's see, the planning board meets that night.
General business?
I mean, we can certainly coordinate between us when the next time, I mean, because, our next meeting is in this very room next Tuesday, and that might be too soon,
I
I'm
think so.
guessing. So we can sort of work it out, and we'll certainly announce, when the next time is that David is going to join us.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Potentially July 5th.
Well,
It's a
there's-
planning board
There's a
meeting.
planning board meeting that
Oh,
night.
planning board meeting that night.
And we have River Knoll resubmitted their proposed DEIS, so we've got that going on.
Great.
Yes. Quite large.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or discussion as far as?
No, but I thank you for the information. I think
Oh.
it's extremely helpful.
Oh, there was, the only other thing was the conversation that had been brought up at the public hearing about this not being 2 acres, but being 4 or 5 acres, and we have researched and found nothing to indicate that that makes sense at all.
Anyway, so I think
regarding-
it's great. I
Regarding the
appreciate it.
size, I've got 3 credible sources that tell me 2 acres.
So, the, thank you for the tremendous amount of work and effort that went
Sure.
into this. I think that we've, really done a thorough job of examining every possibility of things that you could possibly do on that project, or that particular parcel, rather, it was parcels. As we go forward, a lot of things will factor into what gets built there. And if there is remediation that needs to be done, that would probably involve an environmental review, and then whoever takes that on has to incorporate that into their development plans. Correct, David?
Yes, and regarding the potential contamination, I think the market will probably dictate whether there's enough money, either through private money or a grant, to remediate all the way up to residential standards, or whether there isn't enough money and it's going to end up being non-residential.
But the current property owner is not required to test anything on their current property. It's, they own it, they're using it, and they don't have to do a darn thing, from what I understand. Is that true?
I think that's correct.
But if they were to change the use.
Right.
If they were to
If
decide.
they were to change the use.
Even if they were to
Right.
try to change the use from what's now general business industrial to a residential.
Oh, they would have, yeah, at that point. But at this point, they can go on for 30 more years and never do a bit of testing, and that's all good.
Well, the reason is because the brownfield kicks
not
in.
good,
It's not good, but not being used as a residential property, so that, not that it's good that it's a brownfield, but it's industrial
No,
use, so
I
you're gonna
absolutely-
have.
yeah. There's no way to
I
find
think-
out.
I think even if it were changed to a non-residential use where they were digging up the pavement and excavating, they'd probably have to
Do a-
go through the studies.
Good news is that there is some grant money out there now to clean up brownfields, so a savvy developer might go after some of that money to do that work. In fact, they were interested in doing some other use.
I still don't see any of these business owners thinking about selling or changing anything that's going on in that neighborhood, so. At this
All right.
time. Thank you very much, Dave. You've really worked hard.
Thank you very much
sure
for
have.
saying
I
so.
really
Thank
appreciate you answering the question so thoroughly.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Been on the hot seat a few times.
Okay, and yeah, and we appreciate the exercise and think that it was and appreciate the feedback from our public. So thank you for that. All right,
Free to go?
you are.
Thanks.
Okay, next up. To Ryder Park.
Good night.
Night, thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
Want to wait, right? Okay. So, do I have this proposal before me? We've been talking about some upgrades that need to be made to the building at Dale Cemetery, and we've gone back and forth multiple times with Stephen Tilley Architect to look at contract for them to evaluate what needs to be done there and give us some designs and oversee the request for proposal project. And I think we finally reached a good agreement with them. We've had our council review it a number of times and just wanted to see if the board had any questions about it that we could answer. Not seeing the whole proposal here in front of me. But just wanted to know if anybody had any questions. Thank you. I've like flipped it over 5 times. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to talk about? So basically, let's see if I can find the primarily the work that they're looking to do is exterior work, which would include the restoration of the existing exterior wood porch and trim, repairs to and preservation of the existing stucco wall finish, installation of new windows that replicate the style, size, and location of original sash, replacement of inadequate lintels, and completion of repairs to the stone foundation, repairs to the existing roof, gutters, leaders, and chimney and painting, relocation of electric lines, conduit, and other utility lines or features on the exterior of the building, as well as plumbing work related to the installation of new windows in bathrooms may also be included. And we had asked them to go with a narrower scope and overall more limited budget, unless and until we're able to secure any kind of additional grant money that we could use as we would be putting some of the money forth, and as that would be considered a match to any additional work that we might be able to do inside or on the outside. So they are going to hopefully give us a proposal which with some flexibility in it to increase the scope of the project if in fact we're able to get some grant funds for that, and they will help us with the grant proposals as well. So there are 3 different phases of the project. Project Part 1, which is a flat fee of $8,000. Part 2, construction documents with flat fee determined upon what it is exactly after the project definition that we agree to as the town, and then implementation again, and then reimbursable. So if everybody's good with that, and they reduced their fees a couple of times in terms of the basic fee, which is related to the overall cost estimate. So if there are no questions, then hopefully we can move forward and go into the next phase. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, only just to reiterate that, when we began working with them and reviewing the draft, we had some questions and concerns and clarifications, and they were very cooperative in working with us. And like the supervisor said, in addressing some concerns regarding pricing, they did reduce the pricing. And the pricing is going to be in phases. So there'll be a flat fee for the first phase, and then based upon the range estimated for the second 2, it'll be within a certain range, and so it'll kind of progress in that fashion.
Just the flat fee to be determined parts for the construction and the implementation. We had a scope, I remember, right? And how much we were at first?
Well, we had
It's on
the
the front page.
right. Well, we had the total capital project that we
Right.
estimated on the high end with everything all included was going to be $250,000.
Right.
And we basically told them we wanted to start at a much lower scope than
that's
that,
where the
which is
125.
$125,000. But that's where I was talking about if we could get additional grant money, and we had agreed that that would sort of be the maximum because contingency, et cetera, things happen. We wanted to make sure that we had enough money to accomplish the whole project. And if we're going to start, often with old buildings, it is a can of worms when you start. So as we know, other buildings. So we want to make sure that we accounted for that in the capital project that we approved. Okay. That questions?
As long as the lawyer likes it.
Moving right along. No. What were you gonna say?
Anybody ever mention
Yes.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and it is. It does actually have historic significance, although I don't know if it's on the historic register. But it is part of the.
this price?
It is a significant architect, and there are very interesting architectural elements of the superintendent's cottage. In fact, I just finished reading all of the signage that Senator Carlucci is helping pay for, that the Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy had proposed and is putting up, and one of the signs specifically is about the superintendent's cottage, which I think may help us to get additional grant money, that whole signage program, because it's really identifying Dale Cemetery as a historic site and this cottage as part of it. So even though it may or may not be less expensive to tear a building down and start from scratch, I think that you lose a lot of the history of our village and our town when you start tearing down buildings that have that significance. And honestly, I know that River Knoll has, a beautiful proposal that's before the planning board, but one of the aspects of that is tearing down that old building, which has had a lot of work done to it. The home, again, not on the historic register, but it is sad when we lose some of these sites over the years that have the potential to be rehabbed or adaptively used. So, saying, okay. I know it's sometimes easier, but isn't always better.
Well, just to clarify, if I remember, both Councilwoman, what's your name over there at the end?
Feldman?
Yeah, her. I've had a very long day in the sun. I want to shout out to all of our town and village workers who work outside all day long because I just
Absolutely.
spent one day outside and I don't have a brain. We talked about this a long time ago and we wondered if we could rip it down because we didn't like the price. And we were basically told that it would cost a lot of money to not just rip it down, but to rebuild because it isn't just like the house, it also houses the office. It's a big building. So, Councilman Wiltshire, while I do understand the inclination, because that's where I was a while ago, I like the fact that we're trying to keep this way less while still, keeping historical buildings.
Okay.
And me too. We're all living with it.
And other thing that happened is, which is the next up. Do you have any other comments on the cemetery proposal? Wonderful. Let's see if I have other. Here it is. Okay. So the other thing that happened is, I guess it was last week, which is the next item on our work session agenda, the proposal for the feasibility study at Cedar Lane Park, Reuben House by JGL Food Service Consultants. It had been recommended to me that I reach out to a food services consultant company to talk a little bit about what has been bandied about sort of a couple times about the potential to put a restaurant at Cedar Lane Park, a farm to table restaurant at Cedar Lane Park, potentially in the Reuben House, which has been sitting there sort of getting in worse and worse shape over the years. And one of the person who brought to my attention, it was actually Richard Wishney, suggested that I reach out to Town of Rye because they were looking at food services consultants for the park over there. And I did that, and they had been working with a consultant who was able to bring in some really high-level restaurateur, no end, to bid on food services throughout Rye Town Park, I think, or maybe it's not. It's called Oak Park or something like that. I can't remember the name of Beach Park, but they have a number of different areas where they do food services. So they have one provider that provides food services in a number of different locations, and they worked with this consultant, and they were very, very pleased with what they got out of it because it wasn't just that they now have food services provided, but they were getting revenue from it as well for the town. So last week, a woman from JGL Food Services came to take a look at Cedar Lane Park and walked around and looked at the Reuben House and looked at some of the other structures there. You know, we have a pavilion there. We also have the new art center there, which has this space that we talk about as being flex space, and we've been approached by people who are interested in doing cooking classes there. You know, we don't have any facilities right now in that building where we could do cooking classes, but potentially we could, or we could have a wood-fired stove in the back or something like that. There's also the building right now that's used for the Parks Department where they store a lot of their stuff right across from the Reuben House. There's the ice house, the other side of the ice house that's not being used right now for the kilns. So there's a lot of different spaces available at Cedar Lane Park, and there's also a lot of uses right now at Cedar Lane Park. People come to recreate. They go to the dog park. They use the fields for football, soccer. There are people who are there regularly using the volleyball court on the front of the park. People come and fish. People are using the art center now. And people just like to go walk around the pond, and we have a grant to rehab the pond, which I think we just started to get our final proposals on, so we're getting closer to being able to fix up the dock and the walkway around the pond. And so there's a lot of people coming to Cedar Lane Park, and it's a beautiful place, and people also like to eat. So is there a way to provide some sort of food services to the people who come and recreate there, and or to bring more people into the park to enjoy the park because they want to also have a nice place to eat. So this company basically gave us a proposal to evaluate what type of food services would fit in best and what would it potentially attract. Do a feasibility study for food services at Cedar Lane Park, and how would it be best to offer those services. And this is the proposal that is before us. I don't really have any context to evaluate this right now because I have never looked at one of these before. So I just sort of wanted to get feedback from all of you to see if you think it's something that we should consider. It is not inexpensive at all. It's $21,000 payable in thirds, but it's something that I think is worth considering. Is this something that we want to pursue? I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the city of Rye, not the city, but the town of Rye, because it's Rye Town, is getting somewhere to the tune of $92,000 a year from their contract from the last year. And that was, again, as a result of the food services, which this company was able to guide them to getting a really great bid for. So it has the potential for some long-lasting revenue implications, as well as a lovely use of some of the buildings that haven't really been used to their fullest potential at Cedar Lane Park, that are basically just hanging out there doing nothing.
Dana, in Rye, though, did they have an existing structure that was fit up as a restaurant?
They had to, there was a lot of rehab that needed to go into it, which the town did not put the money into. The developer or the food service provider did actually put that money. That was part of it.
The food service provider put it in, and the town owns the.
Correct. Yeah, it's a lease agreement. It's similar to like what we have with Ossining Boone. Not a lease, but a license agreement. Thank you.
Very familiar.
So, but what they said to us is that they don't believe. The quick look is that they think it lends itself more at the outset to an events venue at Reuben House, that site, than it would to a restaurant with maybe pop-up events. So sort of similar more to like Napoli, what they do, where they have, a very successful events venue, and then they have, they might do things for Mother's Day or Father's Day or whatever. So you're bringing in, for big events, or you might do, brunches or breakfasts and lunches or something like that on the weekends. You're not necessarily having a full-scale restaurant.
But so let me start by saying I don't think it's a bad idea at all to think about the possibilities of providing food. I think that park does lend itself versus, Gerlach, But specific to Councilwoman DeTore's question and to your answer, this says, as discussed when we met, the cost of rehabilitating the Reuben House may be deemed prohibitive. I mean, we talked about the fact that the idea of being able to actually rehabilitate that particular piece, every time I've heard anybody talk about it, they've said it needs to be torn down.
True.
I mean, that's so.
That's right, and that's why we would want to do a feasibility study before we proceeded with anything, to know, does it make sense to even do anything here, and if so,
right,
how would you do that? And so they're kind of look at what are the economics of it.
But you just said something about a part-time, and I'm sorry,
Because
forgive me.
Councilwoman DeTore asked me
About-
what they did in Rye, and I was
Right.
just saying in Rye,
Okay.
it was actually different, but the building maybe didn't need as much rehab.
Right.
Because it was in better shape, and
Got
it was, yes, it was already
It was already a
restaurant,
structure,
but it did
need-
need
right, okay.
rehab, but not
Right.
maybe to the same extent. And again, they already have
I just
food
don't think,
services
I'm
there.
just not sure that Rye is a good analogy to this particular park. Because Rye's in a well-trafficked,
On the
more
water.
densely populated spot on the Long Island Sound. Just some concerns I have. I'm not saying I like the idea, but before we get into a feasibility study, I think there's some interim steps that we can take. because there's no lack of restaurateurs who we might want to reach out to and talk to who do this kind of stuff in the region in similar areas. But I don't think that we should go on an analogy based on something that's done in Rye on the waterfront. That's, you know.
I'm not going with an analogy as much as this was a company that was recommended because they had success in bringing in a high level of respondents to a bid. I mean, to a request for, I don't know if it was RFQ or RFP, whatever it was. And that may or may not be something that you could do on your own. So you might be able to. And we certainly have had restaurants express an interest.
Okay.
Who said, yeah, I'll fix that up, and I have investors in this and that. And sort of been advised, well, before you do that, you might really want to evaluate before you just pick one. And this is how I got to this point, which is, okay, before you just go meet with a restaurateur who says, I have a whole bunch of investors who want to spend money and rebuild this building in your park that may or may not come to fruition. You might want to actually do a feasibility study and make sure that you know what you're getting into, and then if you're going to bring in anybody, because it is worth bringing in, then they already have the information that they need to know what the investment would be for them and if it's worth their while.
Well, why? I mean, having said that, okay, so to your point, $21,000 is a lot of money. But to the second point, why, if it is true that there are restaurateurs who have expressed interest in the past, and I have no knowledge, so I'm just saying if it's true, then my assumption is that those business entities have a business model that if they're going and saying, we've seen this property in the middle of a park and we could, fix up this building or tear it down and redo it with your permission. My assumption is that those people who have those kind of investors have done that kind of homework. I'm not sure why we should have to do their homework. Let them do their homework. If they're willing, if there's somebody out there who's saying, I have investors that can pull this off and we're willing to do this, then why sink money into some kind of thing to let some business person with investors see what they have to, that's their job. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but maybe you end up saying, okay, go ahead, do whatever, and then you have something that's half done because everybody pulls out halfway through the project. I mean, I don't know.
That could happen under any circumstances.
It could, but again,
I'm just.
I see the value of doing a feasibility study to make sure that you have, you're really looking at it comprehensively. My only thought is that based on what it, takes to make a restaurant profitable, like it is a 3% profit margin in a
that's
restaurant.
why they aren't saying a restaurant. They're saying a venue, an events venue.
Space.
That's really more what they're recommending, where you might have like pop-up, you might do, just a brunch business or something like that, and that's why they're doing the feasibility study. I mean, it's because what you're saying, you may find out that as beautiful as the setting is you have, and you may think you're right off of 9A, and this is a lovely spot for whatever. In fact, the traffic is this, or whatever, the possibility of getting your trucks in is that, or whatever it is,
People are always looking for unique, sort of rustic event spaces. So, I mean, I think the event space probably, that sounds, I'm not talking into this, but,
$21,000 is a lot right now. Like, I'm wondering if we could find out. I mean,
well, again, she said in her proposal, this is just a starting point, and this is just their initial proposal,
at
which
10,
So-
I would be a lot more comfortable at.
I haven't, I just got pretty much, so I haven't had a chance to fully evaluate the proposal, but does this proposal include the structural study of the building?
I don't think so. No, this is really more of an economic
So this is just
analysis.
kind of a brainstorming of ideas, so
Detailed
do we
in-
know if it
their-
has to
their
be
written
taken down
assessment will
completely or not?
includes a detailed inventory of competitive restaurants and event sites, information gained from local caterers, restaurateurs, market review of type of popular events and seasonality, conclusion as to whether the market can support the operations discussed, recommendation for visitor food services, a macro level estimate of the number of events that may be booked seasonally in the Rubin House, financial projections including an estimate of earned income to the town of Ossining.
Well, information
just
gained
don't
from
think we're
local
there yet.
caterers, I could ask myself. Can I give it to?
I mean,
I just
I mean,
think that, you know, we
Darwin
should
did.
understand if that building can stay or.
it
Oh,
has been
and don't-
recommended to us by our building inspector that that building
to
should
come
come
down.
down. Absolutely. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know
So why
when
are we
you're
talking
saying.
about booking events in the building that we want to take down?
Well, because it's just, we're just calling it that. It's that building
Okay,
itself
I'm
is,
just
yeah,
trying to,
in that location.
yeah. All right.
Okay?
The feasibility study, though, it really isn't about the structure at all. It's about the viability of an event business in Ryder,
Cedar Lane.
Cedar Lane Park. I'm
That's
so
okay.
focused
Yep.
on Ryder. So, you know, to be really, really clear on what the objectives of this, it would really be evaluating, which, you know, in that context, I think might be $21,000 is a lot of money. But you're also talking about bringing some businesses and activity, because event space opens up a lot of other job opportunities for people and revenue opportunities. So,
And
You
I
know
still
what,
haven't
Mike?
figured out where the event space is, though. If we don't, are we building it? Because
Correct.
if we're not,
We'd
Yeah.
have to probably rebuild it, but, and for that, we'd have to evaluate. That would
So
take another
that's-
set of
I
evaluation.
mean,
that's
bigger
where I
conversation.
get concerned with
This is my
how many
thing,
years
like,
it would take
we're
for us to
talking
recognize a
about-
profit from
right.
it.
We're talking about a feasibility study, and if we were talking about the feasibility study of whether or not pop-up things, it would be one thing. But if we're and it wouldn't be $21,000, I don't. But if we're talking about the feasibility study of, you know, that, or maybe this event space thing, we're not going to be able to put the money into rehabilitating a building that they're saying we should rip down. I don't know what other structure we're talking about. Are we talking about building something? Because I don't know that we have that kind of thing either.
Well, again, if you look at sort of, if you look at a lot of what other municipalities are doing, they do public-private partnerships to create spaces and create revenue streams. So there are opportunities, and they apply for grants through the Economic Development Council, whether it's to rehab space in a park or for historic rehabilitation or and job creation. All of these things are, economic benefits to us here and to the region for tourism, for outdoor park use. And so, you kind of have to think about the big picture and what is it going to bring to us and how are we using our parks? Right now, we have a crumbling structure in our park that's doing nothing for us. Instead of just thinking about tearing it down and having a blight there, let's think about what it is that we can do positively moving forward proactively. And it's a lovely park with a lot of potential. So let's think about what we can do with that.
I think people get nervous when they talk about feasibility studies because it sounds like, well, we're going to spend $21,000 to maybe do nothing. But in all likelihood, and if it's, and you'd want to vet the company and maybe talk to other companies that do this, but in all likelihood, if the feasibility study is done well, what it does is it brings together resources. So you're looking at somebody who does these things all the time. So instead of just talking to one restaurateur who has a business model that does it this way, you're really it's really stakeholder engagement. So you're getting an array of people who have experience and then getting a look at the competitive landscape. So it can be an investment that's well worth making. It might be good to have a preliminary discussion, and maybe that's something we can do with this group to talk about projects that are more analogous so that we could get a better sense of, because you do want to walk in knowing that you're not just going to spend $21,000 and then say, oh, you know what, this is a really bad idea. It most likely won't be that way, but I think it would be good to have some direction going into it.
So I mean, I would say the next step is that, I can bring them in to do a little bit more of a proposal meeting thing for everybody to see, they can talk to us about it a little bit more?
And give us something that's
Yes.
not rye.
Oh, yeah.
The building inspector already told us to tear it down. That it's,
He did. And we also brought in, actually Stephen Tilly Architects, we brought them in to give us an evaluation. And they said that there were elements of the building that were worth saving, but not the entire building. So in other words, you might save some structural elements like the fireplace, or might be able to save pieces of the building, but that would just be,
Sentimental reasons?
yeah, I mean, somewhat, something like
it
that,
still
yeah.
sounds like the building has to go. I mean, everything I'm hearing says.
But there's two different.
I know this is different.
Yeah, I
Building's a
understand.
completely different issue, yeah.
We understand, but I'm just saying to what he's, what Councilman
if he's
Wiltshire said
already-
about the
if it's already
building,
been
like,
stated and
not sure why we're.
tear it down.
We're talking about the
Right, yeah,
location.
no, I
We're
get
talking
the
about
location.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're talking about the
Well,
location.
let me
and
start
yes.
from positive.
Okay.
Takes 21
Things I
thousand-
like about the location. I think it's a beautiful park, and I think those greenhouses would be wonderfully restored as a growing venue for a restaurant.
And I
Okay,
forgot to mention the greenhouses.
Okay.
Greenhouses are worth saving.
the historical greenhouses and the beautiful stonework, and I looked at them. They look like something I could see saving. I'm not a fan of the town going into the restaurant business. To own, to build the restaurant, to own the, if somebody else were to build the restaurant, that's a whole different scenario than our tax dollars building a restaurant and then being a landlord for a restaurant. I think that's a whole nother can of worms that's a very intricate conversation, much bigger than I'm ready to have today. But, we looked at that when they thought about making the boat club a restaurant. And there's a lot of, the restaurateur is only on Parkland, you are legally only allowed to license it for 5 years. So their borrowing ability, the town would have to pay for it and build it. And maybe there are grants out there that the town and maybe a restaurateur can go in together. There has to be a quick, I think it's, 30 days out, but there's definitely a 5-year limit on how long you can license a building. And that's a little prohibitive to who's going to want to own a restaurant that they're paying for the building and then, can be asked to leave in 30 days and can only get a guarantee of 5 years. And what's the lender going to think about that? So there are a lot of concerns that we're already, or at least I'm, that we can already look at before we commit to spending another $21,000 on a feasibility study. I think there are a couple more conversations before we actually commit to this. Is that fair?
Yep. Fair. All right. So thank you for the feedback, and we'll go from there. I think up next is our conversation about Ryder Park. So last week we spent a lot of time talking about what was happening at the pavilion at Ryder Park and some suggestions for what we might want to do with the space where the basketball court was. And there were concerns that we should just go ahead and replace the basketball court where it was. And then there was some conversation about, what it would be if we didn't and how we would address the need for a basketball court for camp and other uses. So we, since that last week, we had spoken with the chair of the Recreation Advisory Board, and she had put out a call to the rec board to take a look at the park at Ryder and respond to the query of whether or not this was the highest and best use to put the basketball court back where it was, or if, in fact, there was another solution. And the solution that had been proposed, one of the solutions that had been proposed was to put the basketball court temporarily on the waning, what used to be a tennis court and is now not a tennis court anymore, but a crumbling tennis court with a batting cage in the back of it. And that was what our parks foreman had proposed, and the rec board took a look at it, and we have Pat Yost here to talk from the rec board perspective, and then we have Mario Velardo to talk about the parks, and we have Paul Frioli to talk a little bit about the structural integrity of the tennis court. So can we start with Pat? You want to come up and just talk about the rec advisory board? And thanks so much for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
So over the course of the past week, the rec advisory board, in combination of some small groups and individually, people went out to Ryder Park and had a look at both the pavilion as it exists and the tennis court that sits down there. And after some discussions back and forth on email as well as on in-person conversations, where the rec advisory board has unanimously come out is that the recommendation for taking the space next to the pavilion and turning that into something that's a little bit more park friendly, picnic friendly at this point in time. So, taking that, making a space so that it can be used for some combination of, we call it cornhole back in the Midwest. You can put, potentially some family friendly games that are there to be used during picnics and when the pavilion's being used in that sort of an instance. Main reason for that, I think a couple folks a little concerned with the sort of, it can serve a purpose for keeping kids enclosed. General kind of concern around that's a fairly limited use up there. Doesn't necessarily get used for that all the time, but in reality is when there are large groups of people up there, that's, I've been up there for baseball events and soccer events, that's actually where the kids get hurt, just because you got so many kids just bouncing around inside some enclosed area. So I felt that would be better. A higher use for that would be for some sort of picnic related activities there. And we were all absolutely fine with repurposing that I'm going to call it the lower tennis court for a basketball court. There's plenty of space there. With what appears to be fairly minimal work, and I'll let Mario speak to the details about that. It can be turned into and put blacktop on it and lined for both, not just the basketball court, but you can also sort of put down there's plenty of space to put down lines for additional items, like you can put down Foursquare, you can put down hopscotch, you can put down all kinds of other things that, kind of playground like games that can be used for either the camp facility or just in general for general park use. So that's where the rec advisory board came out.
Okay, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next up. Hello, Mr. Velardo. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. We appreciate it. Hi. Do you want to just talk a little bit about the thought behind this and how much it would take to bring that tennis court up to speed, and then what happens next?
Well, it has I think like 4 main cracks that run down the center and then just sideways, but those cracks have been there for years, which we already ripped out the old concrete that was put in there. At most, some gravel, which we have at the yard, maybe like a ton or two of blacktop, and then also sealing it at the end because we have a seal machine now. And it's just we have 2 hoops that we don't have to buy that are, one was from Buck Johnson and one we just have sitting there. So we could install those, and then there's really nothing wrong with it.
So is that something that can be done in time for
Well, we
our
already
camp
started
program?
we already started prepping it. The holes are already cleaned out and dug out, and then it's just a matter of installing the 2 hoops and then just patching up the holes.
And you can do
And
that for
cracks.
around 500, you said? Okay, I
Five,
mean, as long as it's that
$600.
low.
No, I wouldn't go in and spend $30,000-$40,000 on
Well,
that without
That's, you
you're
know,
not, because without doing any really drainage work, you're not gonna. But for a temporary fix,
okay, that's a
the cracks
reasonable.
haven't gotten worse over the years. It's been like that for 17 years. Oh, that's as long as I've been here, so it hasn't really changed. It's never flooded. It's just there's a lot of groundwater underneath it, and it's just Ryder Park.
So what
There's-
happens when you fill in all that, all those, the holes and the cracks and all that stuff? Are you now not going to have, are you going to have water pooling up
Well, you never
on
really
top of
had
it?
water pooling up. It's if in some areas if you cut, well now there's where they put the batting cage, there's maybe like 5 or 6 holes because they were supposed to put another batting cage there, and they thought they were putting 2, but they didn't. So there's holes existing there, which you do see a little bit of water in, but it doesn't come out. It's just groundwater that's underneath.
Okay. Question about that? Thank you.
Yep.
I think so. Nobody have any questions? No? Mr. Fraioli, want to come up? No? Have any other comments about long-term, in the long term? Anything? No? You're saying no? I don't want to come up. Any further comments on the engineering aspect of the
You don't see any
The
problems
use of
with
that-
the wetland, the wetness of the area in relation to that tennis court or that area?
It's definitely a low point, and a lot of water does accumulate there from across the street and to the park in general. But I think the remediation measures that he's going to put on there to make it usable for this summer are appropriate.
Okay.
You know, I just went by there today, and we had a lot of rain, obviously the last couple of days. And there is some pooling taking place in some of the areas where the pavement has cracked through to the subbase. And the puddles are still there this afternoon, which is indicative of like a saturated condition underneath, which is pretty clear being that you have the stream right there next to it. And again, you're in that low area.
Right.
But I think what he discussed with me is his measures to bring it up to a safe.
So it'll be fine for a short term,
Yeah,
but you don't, is that an area we could do something long term? Or,
really a program decision. You can do anything anywhere if you put the funds and the
Can I ask a question? If it's only temporary, then what's the long term for the basketball court? If the recommendation is to change the part where the pavilion is to be family friendly stuff and to temporarily move the basketball court to the tennis court, then what's
the rec
the
advisory
idea
board.
for after the summer?
So the Rec Advisory Board said that they are meeting again in September, and they would like to make a recommendation at that point, where to put the basketball court. So if it turns out that there's any recommendation or thought behind trying to make that a permanent spot for the basketball court, there would obviously have to be more work done, I would think, potentially, to make it longer lasting. And or if it turns out that the Rec Advisory Board thinks that maybe a better spot for that basketball court is back up near the pavilion, or
I see.
back
So-
up next to the pavilion, for example, and they say, yeah, this cornhole thing isn't working out at all, then we would then go
I
back
see.
in and pave.
Okay. And to the point of if the Park and Rec Advisory Board were to want to think about putting the basketball court, keeping it where the temporary is, they're going to need information anyway. And since he's here and you're here, so to Liz's question, what would need to be done to mitigate or deal with any water issues that you've seen for something like the basketball court to be put in permanently?
Well, I think I give you a general answer because you guys only are discussing right now a general scope. You would have to improve the drainage in the area to the point where groundwater, surface water would not accumulate or lay in the area where you're looking to construct the court, which is not possible to do.
But it's not impossible, but you're talking about digging and excavating or piping or moving things. I mean, what is generally done to mitigate water issues?
All those things you said.
Okay. So when the Parks and Rec Advisory Board goes back to talk about what to do with the basketball court, they should be very aware that in order to put a permanent structure in that tennis court area, it would cause much work and some cost to be done. Yes? Is that a fair statement?
That's fair. Statement.
Fair statement.
I had asked the last time you were here, and we, I know that you need drainage. That's the problem. But to me, if you could, like you just, Mario just said that he out repairing it, $500.
That's for 2 months. That's not for forever.
Nothing is forever. But talking about for the summer here.
Right, no, but
Yeah, that's-
we're not talking about that. We're,
No, but I think that you're saying, if it turns out, then, and
Yeah.
Mario, you also said something about you're gonna be cleaning out some.
no, but,
Wait,
I mean,
just give me
well, now I'm gonna talk to Councilman Mitchell. It's just-
Fine.
There, I mean, he's talking about he can fix cracks and do this for now, but that's only gonna last until a little while.
Until winter,
And
most
if they were, right, if
till
they
winter.
were gonna try to put that basketball court there for longer,
we'll have to dig it up.
now you're gonna have to dig it up. Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't put anything permanent on top of that. Because because someone made a comment that there was,
So, I'm sorry to interrupt, but to supervisor, so the Parks and Rec Advisory Board should not even be thinking about whether or not the basketball court should be put there permanently. If we're talking about all these
Is that what you
issues.
said? I'm sorry, is that what you said?
no, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to, I don't understand what you're trying to get at. Like what?
What were you just about to say? You said what we would look at is.
Right, because right now the problem is because someone also made a comment in the emails that drainage work was done, I don't know, whatever.
I
how many
remember
years
seeing
ago.
it dug up.
No, because right now there's two tennis courts on top of each other. They pretty much just went in on top of the old court, and you can see it now in the holes that are there, where they
Right.
cut out for the fence poles, that they just laid another layer of,
No, they
I don't
dug out around it, they made ditches, they put in gravel, they tried to draw the water away from, I remember seeing this, I'm not hallucinating,
Okay.
I'm telling
But the
you.
holes I'm seeing, you don't see that. You just see two layers of tennis courts on top of each other.
There, but not in the air, in that whole area. They dug and tried to pull the water away from that wet, they tried to make that area less wet repeatedly. Also where the Briarcliff field is, and, they tried to enhance the stream. I mean, there's been work done over the years trying to mitigate the wetness of those fields. The fields, all the fields.
The fields versus the tennis courts. So there's a couple of things. One of the things is
That area.
that I think the Rec Advisory Board has also asked us to look into
Right,
fixing
another-
up the tennis court that's in better shape, that people still actually use to play tennis. And I'm guessing, because there's cracks there too, that there are drainage issues associated with that as well. And we've asked our superintendent of recreation to also find out if the USTA would help put some money into that, because I know that they do give money out for helping with tennis courts. But if we were to be able to do that and potentially have a basketball court next to the tennis court, the question is it worth it? Could it be done? And Paul, you said yes, it could be done. Mario, you
yeah, of course.
agree
You said
it could be done.
Anything could be done.
Right.
They
it
could
you're
be,
willing to pay for it.
anything could be
Anything
done,
could
but
be
the
done. Right,
cost,
but
but the
it's-
cost and the work to
financially.
do it
You do,
doesn't seem to, I mean, from everything that Mr. Frioli is saying about having to mitigate, and we're talking about digging and moving pipes and directing and diverting water, I just don't know that we want to spend all that money or resources, even if it's in-house, to rebuild a basketball court there. I mean,
Right, but
it's not just going to be just for that. It'll help that whole general area, because even like a year like this year with all the rain, between the Briarcliff field, the center there, and the middle field, it's still saturated.
and it's saturated after they have done many projects of trying to redirect it. I mean, as long as there's springs underneath that park, I mean, we can go and knock on the door of the guy who lives right there, who's been there for 50 years, who could probably give us all the better history. And he came to one of our meetings like 3 years ago and said, the thing is full of springs. They've tried a million times to redo things and there's still water. So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't know how we mitigate that in a way that financially and resource-wise makes sense.
So you're
Happy to
basically
put
asking the question, does it make sense to put any other court there Or does it make sense to rip up the court and let it go back to
I
nature?
thought we just dealt with this a long time ago. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board had made a recommendation to rip it up and let it go back to earth. They already talked about this. So we're just
There's still gonna have to be
rehashing something that had already been decided
Well,
by them at
Kim,
least.
I think what we're deciding today is to temporarily fix it for the
I get that.
basketball court. I get that, and that's good.
We got
And
that. We're
then
all
the
good
park,
with that.
And then the Park and Rec Advisory Board's going to meet in September, and then we'll have a nice big conversation over
But
what
Council-
goes where and drainage and.
But Councilwoman Jeffrey said, should they even bother to meet and discuss the possibility of keeping the basketball court there?
Right.
Or why are they even going to have that discussion?
Well, we might move it to a different section of the park, I thought you said.
But the discussion about whether to keep it in the tennis court, when I have an engineer who's saying lots of mitigation needs to be done, and we have historical information that says that every time they've tried to do it, it doesn't really
I'm
work.
on your page.
So I think what makes sense is that yes, the near term solution I think everyone's in agreement on, right? And we'll do that. I honestly don't think anyone knows the actual number or effort that would be required to do any of the various options that have been bantied about, and that's a discussion that I think, like you said, needs to happen and can happen, right? And if the number's too big and it doesn't make sense, then the decision will be made, right? But at this point, today, I'm not sure anyone knows, but I think the point's been made that, those are all things that need to be taken into consideration by the Rec Advisory Board when we look at, like we always do, what's the best, longest term, highest use for the great facilities that we've got.
But
Right.
maybe in preparation for September, you're going to have a
Mhm.
meeting, we could try to pull some numbers together to find out if, in fact, there's the best spot for a basketball court.
Yeah, and we can do a little bit of groundwork, and I'll go back and I'll have a conversation with Connie and figure out what the
Great.
appropriate next steps are between now and September. And it may not be September, it may be October, but we'll have the conversation and we'll
Okay.
talk
And
about it.
While
Absolutely.
you're standing there,
Sure.
we no longer have a basketball court at Buck Johnson?
No. I don't think
Don't believe so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. He's
Thanks,
a rec
Pat.
advisory board. Doesn't he know everything about the rec?
All right. Okay, so I think thank you for summing that up, Mr. Yost. I appreciate that. And I think that we have now gotten through all of our work session items. So thanks, everybody, for your coming out and those discussions. And now we are going to move into our special meeting. Wanna do-
Okay, can we have a motion to enter the special meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? All right. Doing the roll call?
Councilwoman DeTore,
Present.
Councilwoman Jeffrey,
Present.
Councilman Wiltshire,
Present.
Councilwoman Feldman,
Present.
and Supervisor Levenberg.
Present. All right, so short announcements. Wednesday, June 21st, which is tomorrow, the Mike Risco Music School will be bringing Make Music Day to Ossining on Wednesday, June 21st. This is Austin's third time celebrating this day of community-wide music on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Lots of venues around town and village have music tomorrow during the day and at night, so please do take advantage and go listen to some music. Thursday, June 22nd, Creative Aging at the Community Center from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. is hosted by the Ossining Public Library and the Ossining Senior Nutrition Program. Light refreshments will be served. Then Saturday, June 24th, the Repair Cafe at the Community Center between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. hosted by Green Ossining in partnership with Melrose Lumber and Ossining Recreation Department. Bring your clothing, furniture, plants, costume, jewelry, just no gas-powered items, and let the experts give them new life. Also, Relay for Life at Ann M. Dorner Middle School. The time has changed. It's also on Saturday, June 24th. It is now from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., so come support our team, or your team. Our team is Team Geo Strong. Repair Cafe?
Lumberyard.
Repair Cafe.
Melrose?
Repair Cafe in partnership with Green Ossining and Melrose is going to be at the community center. That is 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We have Les Hommes de Cave, I don't know how to speak French, featuring Anne Goulian at Westchester Collaborative Theater, 23 Water Street in Ossining at 8 p.m., also Saturday the 24th. We have Gloria Freed's retirement party. After more than 15 years as the elected tax receiver, Gloria is retiring as of July 1st. So come celebrate with us and the Lions Club on Thursday, June 29th at the Harbor Square Club Lounge. And I believe 6 degrees of separation is catering. And send Gloria off in style. You can RSVP to Sandy McKee at McKee, M-C-K-E-E, at ebsaccess.com. All checks can be made payable to the Ossining Lions Club. Our fireworks are scheduled for Monday, July 3rd. Tribal Legacy, a reggae band from New York, will begin at 7:30 p.m. Fireworks will begin around 9:15 p.m. This is the kickoff of our free summer concert series for 2017. Keep your eyes peeled for signs and banners around town advertising our other performers and concert dates. I'm also happy to report that we were able to find another date, actually 2 more dates to add to our concert series. So we've found a mutually acceptable date for the Riscos to play. They'll be playing on August 5th, which is Saturday night. That was not originally part of the concert series because we have the fire parade on Friday, August 4th. We had canceled that concert for that night, so we've now shifted it to Saturday night in the Riscos. The Old Mill Singers will be playing Friday, September 1st, so we've added another date. We added 2 dates to the concert series, and we hope everybody will come out and support for the rest of the summer Friday nights, besides the fireworks date and that August 5th, which is the Saturday. And again, you'll be seeing banners up around town soon. Are there any announcements from my board colleagues? Have anything else? All right, hearing none?
Oh, can I?
Yes.
Saturday, the 24th at 3 p.m. Senator Carlucci is.
Oh.
Mario, don't leave for a sec.
What's it? The 24th. Saturday, the 24th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at Lewis Engel Park. Senator Carlucci and Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff will be having a memoriam for Brian Johnson. It's a gathering to remember Brian Johnson, who was a young man from our community who unfortunately lost his life through drowning, but it had to do with a boating incident where unfortunately there was a joke played and he fell off a boat. And so there was legislation that they both passed about boating safety, where people who are going to be out and about must be take a certain amount of hours to get
It's like the equivalent of a
license or accredited, yes.
Right.
So we will be gathering at 3 o'clock at Lewis Engel Park to remember this young man's life. Assemblywoman Galiff and Senator Carlucci will be there with the family members of Brian Johnson, and will also be there to announce some new legislation that they will be passing, or not passing, sorry, proposing and introducing with respect to further bolstering the boating safety. So thank you.
Okay. And now, is there any public comment on agenda items? Hearing none, let's go into our board resolutions.
Okay. Resolved that the town board hereby reappoints Larry Schachtel, Ossining, for a 1-year extension to his 5-year term on the town's Board of Assessment Review, set to expire on December 31st, 2017.
Do you have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign a revised agreement for design and consulting services with Stephen Tilley Architect entitled Preservation and Restoration of the Exterior of the Superintendent's Cottage at Dale Cemetery, 104 Havel Street, Ossining, New York, 10562, dated June 15th, 2017, and subject to approval by council to the town as to form.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
So we had talked about this in our work session, and I'm happy to be putting this forth so we can get moving on the superintendent's cottage at Dale Cemetery and rehabilitation. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Whereas Little Free Library is a company that creates boxes and other structures for the intended purpose of creating a publicly accessible location for books to be donated, borrowed, exchanged, and returned by members of the public. And whereas a private individual donated 2 such boxes to the Ossining Union Free School District, and whereas the school district has offered to donate the boxes to the town of Ossining to be installed on town property and used for their intended purpose. And now therefore be it resolved that the town board authorizes the town to accept the donation of the 2 Little Free Library boxes from the school district. And be it further resolved that the boxes will be used for their intended purpose so long as they are structurally capable of doing so and do not present a hazard to the public. And be it further resolved that one of the boxes will be placed in Engle Park and the other box will be placed in Ryder Park, with the exact locations within each park to be approved by the supervisor in consultation with the appropriate town staff.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Glad that this was such a nice, easy resolution, and we thank you for this. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm for it, yes.
Aye.
But I wanted to know, is this the only place they can put these or at the park?
No, but that's where they asked us to put them. So they may, others, they had donated 2 of these to the town, and they asked to put them in our parks.
Okay.
And we seemed to think it was a good idea last week, right? So we are saying yes, but it doesn't preclude others from being donated and placed elsewhere around the town and village. And again, that would have to be worked out with whoever the
I
appropriate
don't
parties
think
were.
they didn't ask us to put it in the parks. They asked us to put it wherever people gather. And we thought it made sense to put it in these parks because this is where kids gather and where else in the town? I
Right.
mean, what are you going to do? Put it on North
Yeah.
State Road? Like, it's
No,
just-
but honestly, the school, the action committee from the school district asked to put it in our parks. That's why they presented to us, the town. Because they wanted to put it in our park.
came here.
Okay, but that, I think that is really what they were hoping, and they didn't know where in the parks exactly, but they were suggesting that
See,
that would be a good
that's
place.
good, but what happens
Yeah.
in the winter?
I don't know, people use the parks all year, all
They
year.
don't- The kids don't be out there in the winter months.
So then the books will be there. The riverfront.
It's used all year round.
I mean, now that we have global warming, there really isn't much winter left anymore, so,
Okay.
you know.
All right.
But people can still go and access the books all year round as long as somebody is replenishing them, and that's what this project is all about. So we're not responsible for the replenishment of the books. We're just responsible for making sure that we install it and that we let it be there.
I ask.
No, I know. No, I know. I'm just clarifying that for the public though, so. But, I think that it's a great project, and again, another sort of raise all ships kind of a project where if we can all partner on getting books in the hands of kids at all ages, it's good for all of us, so. All those in favor again?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay. And finally?
Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby authorizes the use of Lewis Engle Park by the Ossining Fire Department for their annual inspection dinner on Saturday, June 24th, 2017, between the hours of 4 p.m. and 12 midnight. And be it further resolved that the town board does hereby waive the permit fee for this event, provided that all material to issue the permit is in order.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? I assume that all of you are going to be there? No, maybe so? Okay. We have all been invited. And then just a quick adjournment to executive session for advice of counsel. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay, fantastic. So we will see everybody next week right back here, Tuesday, June, what is today? 27th? 27th, for our regular meeting. And we hope you have a great weekend, and there's lots going on, as previously mentioned. I hope that we get to see you at all of the various and sundry events, and have a great week. Bye-bye.